In addition to the surfing side of your career, observedly, fitness seems to be a pretty big component of it these days, in terms of working with RUCA and developing workout gear, discussing health and workout related topics on social media. I mean, it seems kind of obvious that like fitness and being a professional athlete would go hand in hand, but that's not always the case in surfing. So I was curious to get your thoughts on what role that's played in your life and how intentional it's been in terms of career development.
Yeah. I mean, I've had 2 stages in my career. One, when I was younger, I was a lot heavier.
Okay.
Just in general.
Right.
I probably, right now, I weigh between like 130, 135. I think at the highest in my career, I won the junior at the US Open. I was 158 pounds. So that's a lot of weight difference, right? And I think in any sport, in anything really, the healthier that you feel, the more clarity in your mind, the better that you're going to do each day. And so for me, the second stage was I had that weight issue. I got told, I got paid too much because of the weight that I was at, even though I still performed. That was the funny thing to me. I'm like, wait, I just won. You know what I mean? Like,
and who's telling you that?
Disclosed.
Okay, fair enough.
It was
I was wondering if you meant like abstract societies telling you that, or
no,
like, or
it was a specific brand that had supported me.
Yeah.
And so, that was a confusing element, right? Because it's like, well, do you want me to perform, or do you want me to be a model? Do you want me to be hot? Do you want me to do what I want?
Right.
Like what I love, or, so that's a part how I was saying when you're younger, there's all these fundamental pieces that are getting put together and they're challenging and hard. And, after that, it wasn't that I lost weight. That almost made me feel worse, right?
Sure.
So I continued to be heavier and to sway up and down and with my weight. And probably about 23, 24, I was more comfortable in my own skin and identity. And I realized, to perform really well, fitness actually matters. It actually does change that. If I'm strong on the outside, it's going to make my inside strong. So if I've worked on the inside and I've dealt with all these, complexities of weight and being a female and, give this a try. I don't like working out. That's the funny thing. Originally, it was like I didn't want to do something I didn't like doing. Like, I didn't like the feeling of leg workouts And what I found that it was good to do something I didn't like, because then I learned to love it. And the feeling of being strong actually made me really confident. And I actually did love the affirmation in other people too. Like I did love it. People were like, you look amazing, Sage. Like, great job. Like, how did you transform from this to this? And
that's a human thing to feel good about. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, people say you look great. You're like, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel better about myself.
Totally. And I have no denial in that it felt good to be appreciated for how I looked. And I felt like I was in a comfortable place or a safe place in myself, that wasn't going to just be my driving force, as I wanted to look good for everyone else. And it was amazing to be aligned with RUCA. They're so individual based, and they love like all walks of life. But at the end of it, they also believe in fitness and exercising and feeling strong, kind of like what I was just talking about. Sure. And so it's been really cool, like, to be around such a diverse type of group. Like, Maddie Matheson is like this like crazy cool chef, and he obviously doesn't look very fit, but his like drive for cooking and for people is something I could resonate with. And we still show up and like try and work out together, and there's just like this fun unity to it. So yeah.
Well, I mean, interestingly enough, because you highlight that the fitness part for you was related to performance,
Absolutely.
And not everyone has that, and there's it's a disgusting double standard in all of sports, but certainly in surfing, like I cannot fathom a situation where anyone in the industry has looked at a male surfer and said, you get paid too much for how you look,
right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's just been, and we talked about your career having spanned 15 years and movements in sport and culture about balancing and equality and just the performance of high level female performance, high level male performance being equitable, but they might look different.
Right.
And
you know what's funny?
Yeah.
Is like when you're saying this, that was such a big thing for a lot of my generation. Is the generation before us, there was a big separation between the men and the female. and granted, the women were put through a harsher condition, with prize money
Sure.
and, questionable condition calls. And it kind of felt like the women were always on the back end of things. But I think, my generation of females saw just what would it be? We just saw the opportunity that we really loved the boys and men that we grew up surfing with and found an encouraging factor. And I think we identified that surfing was actually a beautiful and sexy sport also at the same time, that there wasn't a separation between the men and the women, but that together there was this like beautiful unity or kind of component really that elevated the women's side of our sport. And I think a part of that is the girls like thrived off each other. Like, if Alana this was like the times of like Instagram, if Alana was getting more followers, like, I may adjust my imagery a little different than what she had at the time. But, then friends like Laura would be shooting this way. And so I'd apply that to myself. Like, I feel like as a group of women, we had this camaraderie of kind of like elevating the beauty side of surfing. And a part of that was fitness.
Yeah, I mean, I think surfing is a visual medium, and you can see elements of it on the men's side too, where it's like, well, the person that this brand sponsors, it just looks good in the product, like,
right?
And they're not winning a world title. I do think on the women's side, it has balanced out. I think it was interesting just watching it from an outsider's perspective, and you talked about social media and the rise of like, well, these kinds of people are really dimensionalizing themselves purely in a sexual way or like a beauty-based way, agnostic of their ability on a surfboard. And there's always like an action-reaction. I remember Carissa writing a blog post about it years ago on her blog about, she is who she is, and she's going to dress the way she wants and train the way she wants and look the way she wants, and what's important for her is what's important for her. I don't know. I don't know if the surf industry's got it totally right. I think it's in a much better place in terms of respecting performance, respecting expression. But it's funny. I don't know. I mean, you sound like you obviously have a better grasp of it than I would, because you've had to live through it for 15 years.
For sure. And I think, like it's always good to have some people that take it too far, right? Because, like it allows someone for myself to kind of find a balance within it, like without the falling of the criticism.
Sure.
If someone posts something too sexy or, and it's those type of things that you're like, oh, you blew it for us all. But in reality, it gave us a benchmark of what's acceptable or not. And I think with the evolution of like Instagram and establishing just a following or whatever it is, like that honesty of like what you're comfortable with and not being too kind of influenced by certain things. And for the women, it's a scale, right? Sometimes you're a little bit extreme, sometimes you're not, sometimes you... And I feel like, on the women's side, there's this beautiful balance at the moment of beauty and performance, empowerment and individualism, like as a female and kind of what we're capable of. I think each person's story is different. So in some ways, if you want to be more scandalous, like each to their own, it's your life at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, and it's funny, like outrage culture, right? Where it's like, whatever you do, someone's going to be pissed. It's
right.
Too sexy. It's not sexy enough. And it's funny in surfing, which is, and its roots kind of supposed to be nonconformist and kind of out there. Like the amount of like conservatism which is seeped into the industry and the media is kind of insane.
Right.
You said just before that, for women there's this scale. Would you appreciate it if that same scale was applied to men? I mean,
I think it does.
In what way?
I think that every person has the opportunity at them to choose how they want to represent themselves or
right.
what's going to represent them. So, I mean, for men, women, if we're going to talk like, women independence and women strength, like it's still it's still not above men. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
If that makes sense. Like men still have the opportunity, and not that they're not put in this extreme case. It's just the choice for them just may not be as criticized. a little bit? I'm not sure.
I kind of get what you're saying. I think that the surfing world kind of has a long way to go in terms of growing and welcoming more people in from a diversification standpoint or a position standpoint. As I said, there's this weird conservatism streak that's kind of permeated the industry over the course of, a few decades. And we talk about this all the time at the World Surf League, where, the real raw foundation of professional surfing really square pegged itself trying to mainstream, right? Where it's like, we're going to be the NFL of surfing to get more money so I can keep surfing. That's kind of if you talk to the founders of surfing, like, that was the whole con. It was like, we're going to convince these people that this is a sport so I can keep surfing, kind of thing.
Right.
And look, and everyone kind of is in the same boat. Like, if you're a core surfer, like, you kind of do anything. You take a job, you do a photo shoot, you go on a trip, you do a contest, just kind of so you can keep surfing.
Totally.
But I do think that in that process over those decades from 76 to now, the nonconformist, like, radical thinking part of surfing was almost quarantined out in a lot of ways. And people kind of had this impression that, like, well, we need a really clean, whitewashed image to break into mainstream culture. The funny irony is that in 2020, with the information age, you have things like Jackass penetrating mainstream culture. It's just people being true to themselves. And I think surfing kind of has to recalibrate itself. And I'm not just talking about the World Surf League. I'm talking about, like, surfing writ large, like, people that do it, surf shops, the industry kind of have to say, look, like, we are who we are. You shouldn't criticize someone for wanting to express themselves in any form.
Well, I think that's the part that I was saying. I love in life challenging your kind of basic theologies or even as, the surf industry, what you're supposed to be. I love the challenge of digging into that and finding a different route in a way. Because that's what I had to do to give myself a career. Yeah. Because what I was presented with, it said it wasn't going to happen for me, right? So the navigation of working beneath your just surface culture or what's being said is going to be done is what I like.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.